Hi, my name is Bart Rienties. I'm a professor of learning analytics at the Institute of Education Technology, and I work at the Open University in the UK. I would have loved to come to Bangkok. I've been there many times um, to come to the Future of Education conference, but unfortunately my travel arrangements couldn't be sorted out to come to you in person. But I hope that this video will inspire you. I'm actually traveling to the Netherlands on the day that I'm actually on the time that you're watching this video. So I will try to go online and answer any questions, but do just reach out. You can find my email address here, and always happy to address any of the comments later on. So what I want to basically talk about is the role of AI and digital assistants to transform higher education. I'm sure that many of you are using AI already in your education, or if not, what could you learn from what we have gained at the Open University. So in the UK, there were a range of studies that looked at how students were actually using AI, in particular also for assessments. And in 2025, around 55% of students used it, and went up to actually 88% in 2025. And in the most recent study just published, actually only 6% of students indicated that they did not use Gen AI for any form of learning or any kind of assessment. Probably they don't even realize that they are using Gen AI when working on various assignments. So basically the assumption any educator can make is all students will be using some form of Gen AI when working through assessments. And this could be a good thing, and this could be a perhaps not so good thing. So what I would like to share with you in this 35 minutes talk is what do OU students want from AI, and what do our staff actually want? Um, how could an institute like yours develop your own Gen AI approach, and should it? And then last but not least, can we perhaps help each other on this wave of AI and perhaps work together? Because there's so much opportunities for us to work together. So a little bit to give you a context of why the Open University has always been very interested in analytics and in AI in particular is because we're the largest university in Europe. We have nearly 200,000 students studying with us, but most of these students are in kind of non-traditional roles. So oftentimes they don't have so-called A levels. 7 out of 10 students are already at work, and we have an amazing group of students who have a so-called declared disability. So we need to really be mindful of how we can provide a kind of personalized learning experience for this diverse groups of students, and obviously AI is very good at that. So within the Institute of Educational Technology, which is probably the oldest institute in the UK, we're 50 years young. Um, we have a range of research programs that I'm very pleased to support in terms of what we want to do. So I'm very mindful that I can only provide a whistle-stop tour of all the amazing work we do at the Open University in IET in particular. But if you're interested in other work, just have a look at this website. And I'm extremely grateful also for all the funding that has been provided from various externally funded bodies. So hereby I've acknowledged some of the funding we've received. So in terms of AI and machine learning, I know that several of you are already aware of this, that AI has been going on for a very long time, well before ChatGPT. So here you see a couple of examples of approaches that we've been using at the Open University well before ChatGPT became popular. So here you see, for example, our predictive learning analytics system called OU Analyze. We've developed chatbots for students with accessibility needs, for example, by Professor Tim Kopflen. We have provided all kinds of VR and digital assistants, and Obviously, I'm mindful of the time, so what I will do is just provide an overview of two of the most promising narratives. But before I do, I think it's really good to briefly watch a video that we've recently launched about OU Analyze, which is our leading predictive learning analytics system. And Professor Castilla Eudotto and Professor Miriam Fernandez basically give an amazing overview of what the link is between AI and learning analytics. So I hope you will enjoy this brief video.
When people talk about AI and data, they often talk about algorithms and predictions. But how can this actually aid in education?
Many people are thinking of AI as something mysterious. At the Open University, we use AI as a tool to help with teaching and learning. It is about giving our teachers the superpowers to be able to support students and help them succeed. We are research-led, which means that whatever we do is tested, piloted, and only if it works, we give it to students. If not, we get rid of it.
And do you have any examples of this?
Well, I can give you the example of OU Analyze. The Open University has been pioneer on the use of machine learning for the early identification of students at risk. We need to help our students early because even if we try to help them after they have given us the first assignment, it's too late. So what we created there is a tool that learns from past behavior and then identifies which behaviors are associated with not succeeding. The tool is very simple, it's a traffic light system, and on top of the predictions, we provide a lot of information like the VLE activity, the last time the student logged in, which gives the tutors the information they need to take a decision on which type of intervention they should do to help the student.
So how did this idea evolve from something that was used by tutors into something that can be one day used by students?
So what we really wanted was to give students agency. So what we decided was to co-create a tool with students in which we asked them about their needs, and then we gave them the data and recommendations of things that they can do to make sure that they have agency to succeed in their studies.
And can we trust these predictions?
Well, there is a lot of work that we have done to make sure that these predictions are accurate enough, because when algorithms are used to encourage decisions, then there is a problem that you might benefit certain groups over others. For example, males versus females, non-disabled students versus disabled students. So we have done work for years on algorithmic bias identification and mitigation to make sure that we have the right strategies in place and ensure that the algorithms provide the same support to all of our students independently of the group they belong to.
So is it fair to think that it's kind of like a Fitbit, but for studying?
That's right. Like a Fitbit helps you track your physical condition, this is more of a Fitbit for studying. It helps students become aware of what they are doing in terms of studying and how they can improve their performance. In terms of studying, this may mean that you haven't done some key reading or you haven't completed an activity. This means that you can look into those adjustments to your study, make sure that those small difficulties do not pile up, and manage to cope before the problem becomes unmanageable.
So this program of research and application of OU Analyze has been going on since 2012, 2013, and with dozens and dozens of studies, we've shown the effectiveness of implementing this at scale at our OP University. And very recently, we've also launched our view of where global digital education is going to move to in the next couple of years. And you can download the report here, or just by scanning the QR code. So obviously, it's not a surprise that artificial intelligence and Gen AI are on top of the agenda. But also, we really want to focus on the notions around climate change and sustainable digital learning. We've invested a lot of time, energy, and money on extended reality, which I won't talk about today, but you can find out more if you go to our website. Obviously, we spend a lot of time on learning design and how we can provide a powerful learning experience for our students. And obviously, we need to think about how we provide digital assessment. So you can download that report for free. So if I then move to actually the main chunk of the talk, and that's about AI and how you can provide a digital assistant to our students. What we really wanted to do is to work with students at the beginning stage, because one of the things we've learned from OU Analyze is that it's really important to get substantial buy-in from the end users, whatever system you're developing. So when we in December 2023 initially started with a very small group of around 10 students, we gave them a couple of examples about what AI could do for them. And at that time, obviously, very few students were familiar with ChatGPT. So we basically gave them like, oh, it could create content for you automatically. It could provide some flashcards to answer you some questions, or you might get a virtual tutor, something like this. It really now looks very outdated, but it's only just 2023. And based on these initial prompts of students, we then asked them, what would you actually, how would you see this? And so, for example, one student thought that it would be really useful to have this 24/7 AI digital assistant, for example, to find more information. And obviously, even though we have amazing tutors, not all tutors will be available 24/7. Another student mentioned that, well, they were non-native English speakers and they were not really confident about grammar, so an AI assistant could help. And another student was basically saying, well, I'm really worried about revisions and making sure that I fully understand the learning materials before I go to further assessment. So based on a range of these interviews that we conducted, we distilled 4 kind of services that these students were expecting to see in an AI digital assistant. So obviously real-time assistant and query solution, where the AI digital assistant would know the respective student, what the student was studying, and where the student wanted to go next. Obviously, the kind of personalization narrative, given that we have such a diverse group of students at the OP University, they wanted to make sure that whatever Ada was providing was personalizable and accessible to their needs. A third point, which in a way is also obvious, is that Ada should support academic tasks, so helping with academic activities. And then there was a more mixed support around emotional and social support. Some students would absolutely love that you could talk to an AI assistant about life or about your journey as a student, and others were much more skeptical. The reason why I'm spending a lot of time on this is that you will see later on with the range of studies that these kind of patterns seem to emerge also in bigger studies over time. And then there are, of course, concerns around the use of AI. So even when these students were perhaps not always familiar with ChatGPT, the biggest concern, for example, one student was worried about is whether it would replace humans. another student was worried about what if the work is rubbish, and what would it then do in terms of creating a narrative for other students if no one would check this. So from that initial set of interviews, these 5 themes emerge about academic integrity, the kind of operational challenges that would influence how the students might perceive their learning journey, obviously the ethical and social implications. There were concerns around data privacy, and also the concerns around the future of education, which is very nicely illustrated with participant 8, who was worried that eventually this AI would lead to a situation where it's very unclear what his children would do in 10-15 years time if AI would become all pervasive. So while we were writing and doing our first experiments with building chatbots, we also developed a very nice kind of conceptual piece of work together with a range of experts in the field, which is called the Promises and Challenges of Gen AI and Education. And I would highly recommend you to have a look at that paper. And a couple of weeks ago, I asked ChatGPT, after many iterations, to also have a look at that paper and see if they could provide a visual of the paper and of the authors. So it basically did this very nice visualization, and that AI wouldn't replace educators, it will empower them, that there was a shared agenda around human AI partnership, that there was a need for strong evidence, that there is this human-centered design, that there is a clear policy and governance, and that we needed to make sure that AI literacy was being developed by all. So I'm mindful that normally when I show an orange screen, it is a point for interaction. So if the host is ready, feel free to pause the discussion for a brief moment. So what is actually wrong with this slide? Well, I'm giving you the answers a little bit. So first of all, for those who know the paper, there were suddenly some new authors on the paper that weren't in the paper, that you can see on the right hand side. Some of the authors were assigned a wrong gender. So if you know Mutlu is a professor, a male professor at University College London. Perhaps more importantly, you will see that many of the people actually don't really look like them. But the interesting thing is that the key messages of people holding these marks, etc., is about right. So ChatGPT is very good in terms of the kind of the textual analysis. So I provided some further prompts to see if they could sort out these issues and gave them more tokens to make sure that we got the right numbers. So it then did this again, and it said, yes, I will change this, and blah blah blah, and then we did again the same thing. I'm not sure if we can pause this again, but if we pause this and afterwards ask it again, there's still many obvious mistakes in this, although some of the text are correct. So again, wrong authors were included, and then suddenly some of the authors' names were misspelled. And even though I prompted that the ChatGPT should look at what the authors look like, actually they don't really look like them. So it's really interesting. So I guess what I'm trying to say in an inarticulate way is it's quite of interesting when looking back at where we were in 2023, where we're now. You could see this is a lovely example of that we need to be quite critical of what we are doing. So one of the reasons why we wanted to be critical towards this is that we know that there are some issues around Gen AI. So what we wanted to create is this walled garden. The Open University has a lot of data about our students. A lot of it this is very sensitive, but also we know from the interviews we did and the surveys we did with students that that students themselves and staff were worried about what would happen to data if we would just share this with common Gen AI providers. At the same time, you could question whether or not, with the speed of developments, universities should even develop these kind of walled gardens, or whether we should just, assume that these big tech companies can just do better. So what we have tried to do is to do a bit of both. And we basically, over the last 3-4 years, developed a kind of design-based approach to explore the affordances and limitations of developing such an institutional AI digital assistant. And I'm extremely mindful that I can't go through all the steps, but the paper has, one of the latest papers has now been published. So I basically will, the main reason for this visualization is to show that basically at every cycle with either staff of students, we show different versions of ADA, then adjusted ADA based on their feedback, then did another study, is this what you like, is this not what you like, and then slowly we got to more robust experimental testing. So in this is how ADA looks. It looks like a normal VLE, but in the background there are some additional functionalities that students can see. So for example, they can see the course content, and then they can ask for an expansion of whatever we have provided, or provide a simplification. Then obviously there is a chatbot, and that chatbot would know exactly where you are studying and in which week you're studying, on which topic you're interested in, and it would remember some of the queries you have done. And we basically built this chatbot together with students. And obviously on every page there is an opportunity for students to quiz based on the materials we have developed, but it's again in a walled garden, so all the data is only shared within what we've told our system to build. And if you want to know more about the technical specifications, there's lots of information about this in our various papers. So in study 4.5, what we specifically did, so once we showed and allowed students to play with the system, we specifically chose a group of students who were quite positive about ADA, and then we also specifically chose a group of students who were extremely negative about ADA, around 20 students each, because in study 2 and 3, but also in study 1, we had a group of around 20 to 25% of students who were extremely negative that the Open University was investing time, money, and effort into AI. And we wanted to see that perhaps by providing students a lived experience of what AI could do for their studies, we were wondering whether or not they might change their minds. So as you can clearly see from this, is that those who were positive before without really working with ADA, they remained extremely positive after playing with ADA for some time in their studies. But those who were not so positive, or let's say negative, they became more and more positive because they could see the affordances of their of ADA for their studies. And then in the latest study, in study 6, we provide an experimental design where we randomly allocated students in either the experimental condition, where students would basically have access to ADA, and then the control condition was basically the exact same course, but then in without ADA, and students wouldn't know in which system they were. And what we found, when students could freely engage with this material for a certain number of weeks, that on average students spend around 2 to 3 times longer in the course with ADA. Obviously, I'm extremely mindful that spending longer doesn't necessarily mean that it's better learning, but yeah, there are some indications, and in this voluntary experiment, that this is a good indication of engagement. And we also found that students spend more time actually visiting more pages over time. Perhaps more importantly, what we found was that at the end, for those who completed the post-test, that they seem to have a higher knowledge gains at the end of the course, and were also those who completed the post-test in terms of whether students were happy about ADA, 94% of those students indicated that it was useful to understand our learning material. So there's an initial kind of evidence from a quite nice experimental control style study that there is support for this. And then we went live in a real environment at the Open University with a so-called induction course in October last year. And in the induction course, all the students who were studying in the Faculty of Wellbeing, Education and Language Studies, they were given access to an adopted version of ADA, where they could find out a kind of compass of where could you find all this amazing support and learning materials, etc., etc. Because if you're new to the OU, it's probably very overwhelming. It also provided some focus of how to learn to become an independent independent student, and also some tailored support that would help the students to connect to other students. So it seems that with this kind of implementation in a real life student setting, 40% thought it was useful to explain complex topics. A range of students thought it helped them to improve their academic writing. And overall, the key insight is probably that the students use AI to support learning, not to replace it, which I think is a finding that we also see in other studies. So another key finding of study 7 is that one of the strongest values of this inbuilt system of ADA was the trust, that students felt safer using an AI when it was endorsed, aligned, and academically appropriate within their course, rather than something that is being hosted at some server somewhere in the world. So there are some good preliminary signs. And at the same time, and I'm very mindful of time, we're also very much working with our academic and teaching staff of how we can help to support them to use AI to, for example, create new learning materials or help them with working on assignments for students. I'm just going to show a final video before I will round up the talk.
So we know people learn differently, but how can technology make it more personal and accessible rather than a one-size-fits-all?
The OU has always had a diverse student community. Our students, some of them are working full-time, some are carers, managing long-term health conditions, disabilities. They come from all different educational backgrounds, and that's what makes the OU distinctive, that student body. We take course design very seriously because we understand one size doesn't fit all. And the pace we need to work has also changed. Knowledge moves faster, courses need to be designed and updated regularly, more frequently, and academics are managing a lot more materials than ever. And the question is, how do we maintain quality and the thoughtful adaptive course design when the pace has increased so much? And that's when a tool like Scribe could come in use.
So what is Scribe and how does it help academics in practice?
Scribe is a generative AI tool that we have developed at the Institute of Educational Technology. It's part of the Quality Enhancement and Innovation Initiative here at the Open University. And it's a tool to use generative AI to develop curriculum. The tool was developed since 3 years. We started with several prototypes and is currently used by over 180 teachers within the Open University.
And do you have any examples of that?
Oh yes, we have various, and one really interesting example is when our academic had taken a traditionally written feedback to adapt it for our student who needed to read it in a different way. Student needed to read the feedback almost as a musical way, a poetic, rhythmic way. So our academic used Scribe to adapt the traditionally written feedback into a musical form.
And what does something like Scribe say about how the OU approaches technology and innovation?
The OU has been at the forefront of educational technology for over 5 decades. Distance learning, open access, flexible study, these weren't the trends OU followed, these were the ideas OU pioneered. So that's our approach, that's how our approach comes in practice with Scribe as well. And we don't adopt things because they are trending. We do research, we pilot them, we evaluate its usefulness, and then we do evidence-led design decisions.
Technology should support human teaching and learning, not replace it.
So some really fabulous work also to help our staff to become ready with AI and actually use the power of AI. So I think what hopefully in this whistle stop tour, some of the Gen AI work and learning analytics work we've been doing at the Open University, and hopefully gives you a flavor that it can enhance student learning experience. And it seems to suggest that our studies indicate that ADA is able to provide a kind of 24/7 immediate feedback to learners that is actually relevant to them, because Ada would know for students where you're studying and what you're studying. Well, for example, for Scribe, it would know what the academic in a particular discipline was actually working on. So that kind of personalized guidance and that kind of institutional integration could be really helpful for driving kind of positive student and staff perceptions. So where we're currently at is that we now have a quite powerful AI digital assistant for both students and for staff, and obviously we would be keen to work together how we can use this perhaps also in your institution. So I'm extremely mindful that you might have lots of questions, so do reach out to me, and yeah, thank you so much for your time, and again thanks for the invite, and looking forward to hear from you. Bye for now.